Hi, Karen. How are you? Happy Monday.
Hello. Hey, Pam. Happy Monday. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. Monday's over. Yay. How was your Monday?
Yeah. It was busy, hectic. It was good, but productive. Those days? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. The topic we're talking about today is caregiving. And so I had
Mhm.
to interrupt my in the middle of the day to run my dad to the doctor. And so there is, of course, all of that caregiving component going on. So yeah, I just thought of that. I wanted to throw that in because
No, I'm
that's what we're
glad.
talking about today.
No, you're right. That's a perfect segue into the topic. And the reason that I've chosen the topic is because you know how I like to use the word trending, right? Like it's a
Yeah.
trending topic. I'm telling you, caregiver is a trending. It is a trending word right now. And I've had it with my coworkers, I've had it with myself, I've had it with my friends, I've had it with my family. It's just something that happens to us women in our 40s and 50s, right? And 60s even.
Yeah.
And we don't we don't realize how many of us it affects. Like we went from being mothers, caretakers, to raising our kids and thinking it's all over, right? But it's really not. It's not over. Um, so I wanted to talk with you about that tonight because I think it is definitely a very just widespread. The word itself is just it can segue to so many different discussions. And for the sake of like not having several hours to for our listeners,
Mhm.
we'll kind of like we'll kind of just like streamline it a little bit tonight.
Okay.
And I just thought like let's start with like real simple. Who are the different types of caretakers that you know of, like right
Okay.
now? Who do you think? Like who besides moms would you say?
Oh, okay. I thought that was rhetorical. Okay, let's talk about it. Well, the big one for me right now is elder care.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, because
So
I am still in the
I
sandwich
know.
generation because even though I have two adult children, and I don't have a young kid, but I do still have a teenager who's starting high school. And so the marinating and growing of him, the
Right.
helping create this productive, independent member of society, as I like to call it, is still
Yeah.
happening. So I'm very much in that sandwich generation. So elder care giving is a big part of my life right now.
Yeah. And I do think that that is the most typical part of caregiving is our elderly parents. Because, you know, you are probably unusual in that you do still have a young kid. Well, just started high school, right?
Yeah, because
Um,
I'm an old mom to him.
but then when you were caretaking for your mom, all those, what was
Yeah,
that, about how many years ago? Your kids were younger. So you've
that's
always kind of,
true.
yeah,
I've been in
you've
the
always kind of
caretaker role
balanced
for
that.
a while. Yeah,
You
this
really
is not
have,
a new role for me
right?
because my mom was diagnosed with cancer in 2015.
Yeah.
And so as of that moment, I entered the sandwich generation. And then as
Mhm.
soon as my mom passed, it was everything you need to do for my dad, which gets to be as he gets older more and more and more.
Yeah.
So
And
I'm very familiar with the elder care side of things. What about you? What other kinds of caregiving
yeah,
comes to your mind?
um, I mean, I witness, you know, my friends and coworkers in your situation with their elderly parents. As you know, both my parents are not here, so I don't caretake them. Um, but um, I I say what I did witness most recently with like caretaking myself was when, you know, my brother was in the hospital when he got sick pretty quickly. And I saw how his wife had to like caretake him while he was in the hospital. And just how taxing that can be on somebody when your loved one is really sick and in the hospital, you know, and all that driving back and forth to the hospital and the things you need and such like that. So there's just all these different avenues, right? Like you've got your what you had with your mom and dad, you had your kids, and I've only had, you know, short-term caretaking roles. So I can't possibly understand how that feels, you know, for you and other people. But, you know, kind of talk to me a little bit about what do you think has been different for you, like when you were caretaking your kids and your mom versus now where you're just caretaking your older kids and your dad? Like, what do you think is different, and what do you think is the same about those two
Mm.
things?
Yeah, I want to talk about that, but I'm going to back up really quickly and just say that you mentioned caretaking. You saw your sister-in-law taking care of your brother, and that whole dynamic, taking care of somebody that you love as in a
Mm-hmm.
partner,
Mm-hmm.
that's a whole
Yeah.
can of worms. Like that there's just
Yeah.
added layers onto it because it's your life partner. And I
Right.
just think that
Right.
we maybe will spend some time talking about that
We
after
have to
this
talk about,
because
yeah,
yeah, like
I definitely want to talk about that too, for sure.
ooh-wee, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
that's a whole
Mm-hmm.
other thing. Like
It
there's a
is.
little bit of a separation, you know,
Mm-hmm.
between me and my parents. It's different than if you would take care of your spouse. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's just kind of different.
Yeah.
But so you know what I realized because for the most part, it's changing now, but for the most part, I took care of my mom in very good sound mind with physical challenges. And my
Mm-hmm.
dad, for the most part, very sound body with mental challenges. So
The opposite.
those are very different types of caregiver roles. And I
Yeah.
would say that it was much easier to take care of my mom because
Mm.
her mind was always there until the very end. And
Okay.
she had something called hepatic cell encephalopathy, with which impacts the brain. But and then she became very confused and didn't know who I was because of that. But
Mm-hmm.
up until like I would say 3 months before her death, she was way on top of everything mental, like so sharp. And so there were physical limitations, but I would say if I could pick caregiving for a parent anyway, I would
Mm-hmm.
pick that because I feel like it was easier when you can actually have a rational conversation
Mm-hmm.
with your parent and they get it and they can take
Yeah.
it in. It's
Yeah.
different than talking to my dad who has dementia,
Yeah.
and it just like I'll try to tell Bill about something that I was talking with my dad about, and I'll say, I can't even tell you because he was so
Mhm.
nonsensical and made like I don't even know what he was talking about.
Yeah.
So it's so much more. I feel like yeah, like it's weird. I mean, taking care of my mom was a challenge, but taking care of my dad,
Yeah.
it's a much bigger challenge. And now he's starting to have the physical challenges because of the mental challenges. And so it's like
Oh,
now he has
that makes sense.
both. And it's a
Yeah.
lot. It's a
Makes sense.
lot. Yeah.
And
So yeah,
and
that's
with your
how I
mom,
see the difference.
she was still like your companion. You had this person who was
Yeah.
your best friend you could
Yeah.
chat with every day. And with your dad, it sounds like it's kind of lonely because you're talking to this man who used to be so lively and aware, and you're seeing, this decline, this mental decline. And I personally like the word that you came to my mind when you were talking about him is how lonely that would feel
Yeah.
and
Oh,
frustrating.
100%. And that just goes back to what we talk about
Mhm.
all the time is
Yeah,
loneliness on this podcast. So
right.
taking care of my mother brought us closer.
Okay.
And we always talked every day, but those conversations became even deeper and more precious.
Yeah.
But very soon after my mom passed, I felt like even though my dad is still walking this earth, I felt like I lost him as well. So
Yeah.
even though he's here, he's not my dad.
Oh my
Like the
gosh.
person that my
Yeah.
dad was is no longer there. So when you're
Yeah.
dealing with somebody who has Alzheimer's or dementia and their essence is gone, it's a weird loss to have them still walking around and being part of the world, but they're really not the person that you
Hmm.
knew. And so it's a weird, it's very, I don't even like, I have not been able to completely wrap my brain around it.
Hmm.
I still process that all the time, but it's almost like a slow death.
Oh my
It's
gosh.
weird. I don't
Yeah.
know. It's weird. I
I've
don't know how else
heard,
to describe it. It's weird.
no, I think you're describing it very well. That's what I've heard. I didn't see that with my dad. He was pretty much like your mom up until the very end. Um, and then it happened when it happens, it happened so quickly. but we've known people who have dealt with their parents in the same way you have with your dad. And I think that sounds just horrendous to have to handle.
Again,
Oh,
another reason why I would say it's harder dealing with being a
hmm
caretaker to my dad is harder than it was
right.
with my mom. And that was torture because we were
Yeah.
so close. So it was
Yeah.
more about losing her and her death, where with my
Mhm.
dad, it's about the everyday. And I
Yeah.
have to confess that when my dad moved on and he found a girlfriend, I
Yeah.
actually felt relief. And
I remember you saying that.
I feel really strongly that my mom brought her into his life because she knew I just couldn't do it anymore. I
Yeah.
just needed a break. And
Yeah.
this woman is so caretaking of my dad that it gives me a little bit of freedom.
Mhm. And this brings me into, another thing I wanted to talk to you about is I know that when we hear of somebody whose loved one has taken, they're diagnosed with cancer or Alzheimer's or something horrible, and you think about how horrible that is for that person to have their life decline like that. But I don't know that people often put as much thought into what it does to the caretaker and how that person has to completely change their mindset and their life and everything, right?
Yeah, for
Is
sure.
that fun? You know,
Yeah. And I don't
and
think that it certainly didn't enter my mom's consciousness because you're all consumed in what you're doing. And I wouldn't
right?
expect that to enter
You wouldn't
her.
want her to. You wouldn't want her to
I
feel like
wouldn't,
a
and I
burden,
wouldn't want exactly, I wouldn't want her
right?
to feel like she's a burden. So I'm glad
Yeah.
that she never, and she may have felt that way. She just didn't bring it up. But it is really hard on the other person. But I do
Mhm.
think that it's harder when the family member has mental challenges rather than the physical
Mhm.
ones. Having now experienced both,
Yeah.
yeah, for
You're
me
a
anyway,
good.
right? I can only speak for me.
No, I mean, I think that you probably are like really representing a lot of people with what you're saying. And so, like, what I was wondering from, other people that I've seen gone through what you've gone through, is there such a thing of how do you, and is this necessary? Like, are you able to figure out like boundaries for yourself? And are you able to keep taking care of because we all know that if you don't take care of yourself first, how can you take care of others too? So like tell me a little bit
Absolutely.
about how you're going about that or
Yeah,
you're struggling with that
absolutely.
right
And
now.
I think one of the good things about having a chronic illness is that you learn very early that you have to take care of yourself. As moms, so many moms are absolutely selfless and feel so much guilt or shame if they do anything for themselves. It's all
Right.
about my kids, it's about my partner, and right? That's
Yeah,
like you're
absolutely.
considered you are put
100%.
on a pedestal if you do that. You're
Yeah.
a good mom. That's a good mom.
Yeah.
And I learned very early that no, like that's not going to work for me, and I'm going to just ditch the guilt from that.
Yeah.
So I
Love
practice
that.
self-care religiously. I always have.
Mhm.
Maybe there's moms that thought, wow, that lady is selfish. But I know to me, it's the most selfless thing you can do because when I take care of me, then I can give that back to the people that I love.
Mhm.
So otherwise, I
Exactly.
would be depleted. So yeah, there are some times when I have to say, like, is this a doctor's appointment that I really need to be at? Is this something that I could do online? Like, how can I simplify? And
Mhm.
so I do that a lot. And I'm really lucky that I have a partner who's so helpful as well. And so
Mhm.
we share the burden
Mhm.
together. I know
Yeah.
it's not a nice word, but it is kind of a burden.
No,
A
but it
burden that
is.
I
It
gladly
is.
take, right?
No,
Of
but it
course.
is. It
But
is. I
it
mean,
is a bit of a burden. So
I
yeah,
mean,
so we share that. And so that's really helpful. So there's a couple things. So I practice meditation and I practice yoga and I take baths and walks and like all kinds of things that help me connect and just feel more centered and grounded, things that help me then give love back to the people that are in my world. But then I
yeah.
also rely on my spouse. So I would say those are the couple things that I do. What about you?
Oh, golly. Since I haven't been in your shoes and I haven't been in the shoes of many, I just like I know the one thing is what you already said. I mean, I can hear friends of mine as I think back to conversations about just how stressed out they feel by the expectations. Like, for example, a person who is of the mind of sound mind and needs their child or their loved one, they're very often to attend to things,
Yeah.
and it's just the one person that maybe they don't have. Like I've heard a lot of situations like that where there's a person who just feels very burned out by it, and then they deal with guilt because it's their
Right.
loved one, and how can they, so the only thing that ever comes to my mind as a person who hasn't really been in their shoes is just like boundary drawing, and not feeling guilty about setting boundaries for how can you don't want to be taken advantage of. Does that sound weird? But you also want
No.
to care, but just
Right.
trying to get those boundaries set so that you do, like you said, Karen, if there's an appointment that you need to be taken to, well, let's go ahead and do a telehealth visit instead of that, a 2 hour drive downtown or whatever, So,
Right.
um, that for me, that's all I can think of right now. Oh, there's another thing I can think of is maybe asking others for help and not
Yes.
because I'm not the kind of person who is good at asking for help. But I did notice when my sister-in-law was dealing with my very ill brother, she was phenomenal at the one thing that I'm horrible at, and that is like asking for help. So I do think that those are two, along with what you were saying, self-care, that seems like to me three really good starting tools. What do you think?
Yeah,
Do you,
100%. I agree.
yeah,
And I'm with you. I'm really not good at asking for help. But that's because I just don't, there's not that many people around to be able to fill in and help in my
yeah,
situation. So, I mean, I'm thankful that I have Bill and I will ask him for
hmm,
help. The other thing I was thinking of, like, if there's an appointment I have to go to, I know
hmm,
that my dad would really like to get his appointments done first thing in the morning. That fits for him. But as we were talking before we hit record, that does not work for me. Mornings are difficult for me. So,
hmm,
I never schedule his appointments before 11 or 12. It's just, like I have a son, I have to get to school. I have all kinds of little things
yeah,
that I do. Maybe I'm up late and then I sleep in, whatever it is. I
hmm,
do my morning practice, like I just talked about. So
yeah,
that's just a non-negotiable for me. I'm not going to do that. So I think when you are caregiving for somebody, you have to find these little pockets of things you can control and you
yeah,
gotta hold tight, like hold firm to those things.
yeah,
Otherwise, I think caregiver burnout is going to
yeah.
set in
Yeah, and
fast.
throw away the guilt, throw away the guilt because if you're feeling guilty to begin with, it's because you're a good person and you're doing something probably above and beyond that other people aren't doing, right? You're that person probably that has so much self-awareness that you're feeling horrible about, you know, that you can't do everything the way you want to or should
Mm,
be. So I do think
yeah.
that beating yourself up is probably something you have to throw away as well. Don't you
Yep.
think?
Yes, I
Yeah.
definitely. I mean, I've
Yeah.
learned that in all kinds of caregiver roles, whether it's being a
Mhm.
parent or
Yeah.
caregiving for a parent or a loved one. Yeah, I remember doing this with my grandmother as well when she was sick. So, yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah. So, it's definitely, I know our listeners are at that age that, I mean, you're younger and you've been dealing with this for longer than I think most, Karen. And then on top of it, you also are dealing with a lot of, your own chronic illness. So, I just, I'm really proud of you. I think that
Mm.
it's just incredible how you are really good at handling what you handle. But I also, know that you don't have to be superwoman either, right? Don't you, do you ever agree that sometimes you're okay with saying, you know what, I'm not that person that can do this in
I
the
think
way
I've
that
had to
I would like
learn
to?
that. I probably, I am a recovering type A. I call myself a B plus mom. So, because I
I
have
like
to
that.
just be okay with B plus. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? That's a
Right.
pretty good
Yeah.
grade. Like if I got that on a test,
Really
I'd be
good.
pretty happy. So if
Yeah.
I'm a B plus caregiver, I'm okay with that. You know what I mean? So I think you
Yeah.
have to ditch
Yeah.
I mean, I'm so prone to perfectionism and overachievement and all of those things. So I really just have to ditch it and be like, I'm just going to do my best, and that's okay. You
Mhm.
know,
Mhm.
yeah, yeah. So that's what, yeah, I was able to just kind of ditch that. But I did feel it for a long time, but not
Yeah.
anymore. I don't know. Maybe that comes with age, our over
I
50
think that's
population, maybe. I don't know.
I agree. And I think out of everything that what you're saying here, and this could go across the board for any caretaker, a mother, a spouse, you know, a, a person, an adult person who's taking care of an elderly, is the number one thing that you have to consider, and all of it is your own well-being first, right?
Yeah.
To the point of not selfish, but to the point of healthy, like that healthy boundary for yourself.
It's a
Um,
fine line, right?
mhm,
There's a
mhm.
fine line there. Because I
Yeah,
feel like if you can go one way and be like, oh, they'll take care of it. And I know sometimes some of my family members, I won't name names, but can be like that.
yeah,
Karen will do it. So
yeah,
I'm never going to be that person. But you also don't want to be the person that is so burnt out. And what I think comes with that is just this feeling of loneliness and isolation because you feel like you're all alone in it. And
yeah.
then it's a vicious spiral, like a downward spiral that you feel like you can't get out of. And that's a really bad place to be. So I think connecting, like when you are a caregiver in whatever way you're a caregiver, whether it's to your spouse or to your parents or to your kids or to
Mhm,
another loved one, like a grandparent, maybe, even a friend, I think it's
mhm,
really important to connect with
mhm.
others who are in the same boat as you to kind of just commiserate,
Yeah,
so that you don't feel like you're alone
yeah. It's nice to have a person who has that empathy for you and is
and can
able to
understand. Not like, you know what
understand.
I mean? Like, there's a
Yeah.
lot of people who have empathy, but
Hmm.
it's
Ah,
rare when I can find somebody who's like, oh, yeah, been there.
'cause they've
You
been
know what I
there. Yeah,
mean?
that's true.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a support group for virtually everything out there, but I don't know. Are there support groups for caregivers? I mean, I don't
There
know.
are. There are. Yeah. I
Yeah,
mean, especially you don't even have to go in person. They're online. Yeah,
that's
but
true.
I mean, but I could throw a stone and hit somebody who is also a caregiver. There's so many of them at our
Yeah,
age. There's
yeah.
so many of them. So I have a lot of friends who are also in this same boat. So I don't feel alone in it,
You're
which
right.
is important to me. I mean, even my husband is doing it. He's dealing with it with his mom. So we kind of
Mhm,
just commiserate together
mhm.
with the things that our parents are going through.
Yeah. Well, I think that's, bad and yet it's good, right?
It's sucky, but it's life. You
Yeah.
know what I
Yeah.
mean? We all
Something that
come into this life. We're all going to leave this life at some point, and everybody wants to die in their sleep one day and not burden anybody. But what are the chances of that actually happening? Look at our cancer rates, and you know what I mean? Dementia and all kinds of neurological challenges.
and
Chances
I think,
are you're going to die slowly, and hopefully there's somebody there that's going to care for you.
well, in your case, I think the biggest takeaway I have from you is that, like, and I know we've talked about this before when we were talking about your mom, several episodes ago, is just what a role model you are to your kids, and just for them watching you the way you take care of things. I think that that's like one of the best things you could do as a mother,
Yeah, I
is
completely agree.
so.
Especially, I mean,
Yeah.
listener, you might think this is totally sexist, but especially having just boys who are not, and again, I'll speak for myself
Yeah.
and my boys, they're not caregivers by nature. So I
Right.
feel like showing them this is
Hmm.
so important for
Yeah.
who I want them to become as
Hmm.
humans.
Hmm.
I want them to embrace that role in whenever they need to. It doesn't, not necessarily with me, but in every, I want them to have empathy. I want them to take care of people. I feel like that's a human quality that we should all have.
Hmm.
We should take care of each other. And you know what I mean? So
I
I
do.
try to model that for
Hmm.
them. And I know that yeah, I mean, all of their formative years, right? Because my kids were pretty little when my mom was diagnosed with cancer. They have
Hmm.
seen me and my husband in a caretaker role,
Yeah.
So I
They
hope
have.
that that's imparted something on them that it's
Yeah.
important to care for the people that are in your life.
I think it would have. And, it does worry me a little bit that my kids haven't seen me or my husband have to do that. But then I think about how, well, maybe, well, two of them are medical professionals, so they will have to just by the virtue of their careers. I guess technically my medical profession job, I'm not really a caretaker, but sort of.
Yeah, yeah, for
Sort of,
sure. I think
but
so.
I'm thinking that hopefully my prayer will be that the boys who are not in the medical field they'll marry somebody who brings that in so that they understand the value of it. That somehow, some way in their life, they will have to take care of somebody else other than themselves. You know what I mean? And their children.
Yeah.
Because I
And
do think that that's a
Sophie being a
strong,
nurse, I mean, I think nurses are the best caretakers.
yeah,
You
yeah,
know, like I've been in the hospital multiple times, so I know that, like, more than the doctor, even the person that is always there for me is that nurse.
the nurse. You're right, Karen. You are
Yeah.
right. The doctors aren't as much into the caretaking as the nurses are.
Yeah.
You are 100% right about that. So, but maybe they'll have spouses that will be required of them. I mean, you
Yeah.
don't, I'm one of these moms who doesn't think that kind of thing is like, I want my kids to have these scenarios. And not that I want them to have to take care of me and my husband when we're sick, but I want them to somehow understand how to do it and be ready for it,
Yeah. That
So,
actually brings up an interesting thought that I have. Like, there's actually different ways to caretake. In this whole conversation that we've been having, we've been talking
hmm
about physically being there for the
hmm
person.
hmm
But I do have a brother who is not physically available, but he does
Ooh.
help my parents monetarily. And
Ah,
so that's a caretaking kind of thing. Like, we always know
I
that if
know.
anybody needs something
Mhm.
money wise, that he can help in that way. And he's not the person that's going to come and hold your hand,
Okay.
right? But yet he
Wow.
does in his own way,
Mhm.
he does help.
Oh, I think that's cool that you said that. That does make me think of that. And then what about the caretaker who's not physically there, but is there for you emotionally if you pick up the phone
Right.
or they're checking in? They're
Mm-hmm.
checking in with you to see how you're doing, how's dad doing?
And
What,
yes. And you
I
have
think
played that role beautifully in your family
that's
because you're not
been
physically there.
right.
But I know you're there for, like, you might not be caretaking of your parents because you are far
Mhm.
away. Like, let's,
Mhm.
especially your dad, but you were caretaking of your siblings who were taking care of your dad,
Yeah.
right?
Well, in
So
my
there's different ways.
There are different ways. And I am the first one to jump in the car and go if I have to before somebody dies, because I saw that happen with my mom. And then again, it happened with my brother. And I would say the two regrets that I do not have in my life is that as soon as I found out that they were ill and in the bed and like in a very serious condition, I jumped in my car. I dropped everything. Well, in my mom's case, I flew from Texas, South Padre Island, actually, to Chicago. But with my brother, instead of going to work one day, I just got in my car and drove to Chicago instead. And I will never regret that. And I can't say enough, to our listeners, if you don't live near your loved ones, those are two ways that you can help out. The
Yeah.
money, like Karen's brother, and yeah, like I
Just
did.
because you don't live there
Mhm.
doesn't mean you can't be supportive in some way.
I like it
Yeah.
that you said that. I don't, I guess that didn't truly occur to me until you said that about your brother. Like that is such an important key part here, you
Yeah,
know?
and I think there's so
So,
many ways to do that, you
hmm
know?
hmm
Like, checking on the caregiver is really important too. That's
yeah.
another thing.
Oh, I know exactly. It really
Yeah.
is. But,
Like, my brothers will, even if they don't live locally, they'll check in with me. What do you
mhm,
need? How's
mhm,
dad doing? My dad recently had a fall,
mhm,
and I, immediately texted my brothers, this is what happened, and they were
mhm.
immediately back to me like, okay, what do we need to do? Let's
Wow.
let's get him taken care of. So, and that means a lot to me. Like, it's
hmm
just, I just feel like kind of like a warm hug. I feel
Yeah.
supported when they
Yeah.
do
Yeah.
that.
So your mom raised you guys really well like that, Karen. That they step up like that. Because I don't
You
think all
know,
families are like that.
they saw my mom as a caregiver too, because my mom was, from the time I can remember, my grandfather died when I was one, and
hmm
my grandmother needed a lot of support. And
Mhm.
so my mom was that caregiver for my
Um,
grandmother. So
okay.
in an
Yeah,
Italian family, it's very,
you do.
that's what you do. So
Hmm.
it's like, yeah, so I was raised that way. My brothers were raised that way. And now it looks like my kids. I mean, I didn't intend it at all. I would not wish having
No,
sick parents on anybody, but that's what
right.
happened in my case too.
You're right. And it's not something that young parents even think about when they're raising their kid. Oh, one day I'm going to raise my child to be a great caretaker. No,
Yeah.
you don't think of that. So
No, I've
it
never,
just happens
even
because of
though,
what you model.
even though that's actually been my life, I've never thought about it until
Yeah.
right now.
Yeah.
Until you and I just having this conversation.
Right.
Huh, I've actually been in
Hmm.
that
Hmm.
kind of
No,
world for a long time.
and it's beautiful, but it's sad, together.
Yeah.
But by the same token, your kids are okay. You're okay. We're all okay. If anything, maybe we feel love more when we
Maybe we're
feel,
better because of it, you know?
it is, everything's always a double-edged sword. You don't want to see the person you love suffer, but yet sometimes it does bring people closer together when that is happening. And
Yeah. And
that's
it's character
beauty of it
building
all.
and it builds
Hmm.
empathy, all the
Yeah.
kind of traits that I want my kids to have.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sure your boys are going to make wonderful spouses. And if
I
they
hope
don't
so.
already, they're going to be wonderful to you, I think, through the
Yeah.
years. I can just
We'll
tell.
see. We'll
I'm
see. We'll have
sure
to
of
come
it.
back and revisit, and I'll tell you.
No, there's not a doubt in my mind, Karen. It's not a
Yeah.
doubt in my
What do
mind.
you think? Do you think your kids are going to do that? Or maybe their spouses will?
I do. I think that that is something that, um, my kids just intuitively would have in them. I just, in my heart, believe that they would step up for each other. And I do think if one of them didn't, the others would, um, hit them over the head with a shovel and say,
Yeah.
Come
Like,
on,
dude, come
dumbhead,
on. Yeah.
dumbbell, step up. Who knows? I hope
Yeah.
so anyway.
We'll
No.
see, right? Time will tell.
Yes. Time will
Yeah.
tell.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hopefully
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
too much time. Hopefully lots of time.
Hopefully lots of time. But you want to
So,
see them like, and they kind of learn as they become parents. Something clicks in them, this whole
mhm,
caregiver type of mentality as they become dads and moms. Sorry, my
mhm.
dog's barking in the background. Something will kick in them, hopefully, as they're
Yeah,
raising their own children to help them be more nurturing and empathetic. And, like it's a cycle that like they grow as they get older. It's not something they have to have when they come into this world. I don't think
right.
it's something that has to be innate. I think it's something that can be learned.
Learn. Yeah. Make him mature into it for sure.
Yep. Yeah, and
I
I
mean,
think that their spouses, I don't know what you would say about your two that are getting married, but you know that my oldest has a girlfriend they're very serious and talking about marriage.
oh,
And
good.
like, she has brought out the best in him. It's
Yeah.
so funny because, like, all the things that we said to him in one ear, out the other. But when
Yeah.
she says it, it's like, oh, well, Dell said that I should, blah, 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 blah. And then it's like, oh, really? You don't
Okay.
say. Dell said that. So, like,
Oh,
maybe, like, I don't know, do yours listen to their partners?
I do think they do.
Yeah.
I definitely think they listen to their partners, and they're both really good girls. So
Yeah.
I'm really proud of their choices too. And yeah, I think so. I
Yeah.
hope so. I'm
Yeah.
sure of it.
Yeah. 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 It kind of just makes them better. Like
They're
I'm
both,
sure you did for Pierre.
oh, I 100%. And Pierre admits that too.
Yeah.
He does.
Yeah.
He completely admits that. Yeah. Well, this has been a good topic, and it has been
Yeah.
in my mind because, I've seen it. It's trending everywhere I go. I've got a friend or a loved one who's taking care of somebody, and I see the toll it takes on them. And I just I just feel for them because it's difficult. It really is. And you're trying to balance that with like your job and your own life and your own health issues. And, I just don't think people stop to realize how important it is that caretakers really take care of themselves first
Yep.
and foremost.
Yep. And I
So
would say if I were to give any advice at all, I have two things that we talked about today that I think are most important. And number one is that you find some kind of self-care for you. You find
yeah.
some way that you can take a break. And then number two is find others like you because I bet you they're in your community. I bet they're at your church. I
Mhm.
bet they're
Yeah.
where you work. There are people everywhere. And if you can't find
Mhm.
them, go online because there are
Mhm.
groups everywhere.
Okay. I
So
agree with
that's
that.
my two biggest pieces of advice.
And I'll add to that to set your boundaries. It's okay to do that without beating yourself up. and to don't feel too guilty about things all the
Ditch
time.
the guilt. Yeah.
You do your best. You do your best, right?
B
So
plus all the way.
yeah, B plus. So well, it
Great
was
topic, Pam. I love it.
yeah, I love talking to you so much. I think of something and I'm like, I
Always.
want to talk to Karen about this,
Yeah,
get
yeah,
her
yeah,
take on
yeah.
it. So
I'm so glad that we got to do this today because like I told you in a text, I said it always
mhm.
just lifts my spirits. So I hope it does that for our listeners too, because it does that for me.
I hope it does. And I hope our listeners are giving us 5-star ratings and thumbs ups.
Yes, we need those. We need the thumbs up. We need the 5-star ratings. We need some comments on YouTube. Let us
Yeah.
know what you think, especially new episode ideas, because you're who we do this for. So, yeah,
Yeah.
whatever you want to hear, let us know.
And maybe people on YouTube can one day go back to the beginning one and look at all the plastic surgery that I've gotten and just see what they think about it. How's it going? Did they like me before? Did they like me after? Wouldn't
Uh-huh.
that be kind of funny, Karen, to
Yeah.
have listeners do that?
Yeah,
I'm
I
just
think
kidding.
that'd be great.
I'm not getting any plastic surgery listeners, but it would be kind of funny if you thought I did, and I could maybe get you to listen to us more on YouTube. Look at
Come
the
check
chat.
out what I look like now.
Did you get a nose job?
That
Hmm.
boob lift is really working for you.
I did buy this thing called a Naira.
What is that?
It's supposed to help with like crow's feet
Oh,
and
really?
wrinkles. I don't know. Pierre wanted to give me a necklace for my birthday, and I was like, you know what? I don't really need
Yeah,
jewelry. I don't
right.
know really what I want right now. I'll let you know. And then you know me, Karen. I'm a YouTube. I started becoming a YouTube person, and I start looking at like, ways to stop looking less frumpy
Right, right.
and ways to do anti-aging. As you know, we've talked about this on one of our other podcasts.
Sure. That's a big thing for women our age.
Yeah, exactly. And I saw this one woman who's like, the beginning of it was, what do you think of my Botox? Is it Botox or not? And it turned out that it wasn't Botox. And I was like, whoa, her skin looks beautiful. She was in her like mid 60s, and I could have sworn she had Botox. And so it was this machine she was using called the NIRA. So I asked for
Okay.
that for my birthday. So
So
we'll
have you
see.
started using it?
I have not. It just came the other
Okay.
day and I have to charge it. And then I think I might be doing like a before and after
You
picture
should.
just to
You'll
see.
have to tell us if it works
I will let you know. Maybe the listeners
because,
can tell me.
those kind of topics, I mean, yes, we can talk about caregiving, but the superficial too and the anti-aging, we want to talk about that as well. We all want to age with
Yeah,
grace.
we don't want to look as old as we can sometimes feel, right?
Exactly. Exactly. You said it. So yeah, we'll have to revisit that topic.
Okay, we'll have to definitely do
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Cool.
anyway, all
Okay,
right.
my friend.
All right. Well, it was wonderful talking to you today. You sound wonderful and you look really, really good.
And so do you, right back at you. I told you earlier,
Uh,
I love your top.
oh,
And we're going to
thank
chat
you.
soon.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay.
Okay,
Bye, my friend.
bye.